Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce Kim Capel. I had the wrong information when I put together the service this week, so Kim is our worship associate this morning.
Good morning. My name is Kim Capel. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a member of the Worship and Music Committee, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. I'm delighted to welcome you here, whether you're visiting this morning or a regular member. Today, we acknowledge that we are located in a place that was once the Wampanoag village of Patuxent. We strive to follow their example and be faithful stewards of this sacred land. The theme for today's service is Universalism, an invitation to love. Our service is recorded. The candles section will be edited out so we can speak more candidly and personally as a community. This service, as are all of our services, will be posted on our Facebook page and YouTube. We also share our services on local public access television. Our service today is presented by our minister, Reverend Lloyd. Our service is being filmed by Linda Harding. Deb Keller-Wood, Director of Spiritual Enrichment, will lead our time for all ages, and today's live music will be offered by Emily Powder-Magna. Oh, and a choir.
Rowdy bunch of this.
That's right. Because our services vary from week to week, we suggest that you join us again to experience the variety of worship we offer. If you are a visitor, please consider signing the guest book in the foyer so you will receive our weekly e-blast. We invite you to join us after the service at coffee hour for fellowship and refreshments. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever you believe, wherever you are on your journey, let us walk together this hour.
Good morning again and welcome, everyone. I'm the Reverend Arthur Lavoie. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am delighted to see you all here and want to offer a special welcome to any who are watching online in any of those forums that Kim mentioned. Please note that if you want more information about First Parish Plymouth or about Unitarian Universalism, our website is firstparishplymouth.org, and you can find access to sending me an email or my phone number is there, and so that you can reach out to me if you're interested in getting more information. So again, delighted that everyone's here and that some are watching us online.
We are not in pursuit of formalities or fake religious laws, for through the stairway of existence we have come to God's door. We are people who need to love because love is the soul's life. Love is simply creation's greatest joy. Through the stairway of existence, oh, through the stairway of existence, Hafid, have you now come? Have we all now come to the beloved's door?
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 34 in the great hymnal, though I may speak with praise by Standing for our challenge statement. And join me in the chalice lighting word of covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another. Please be seated.
So Reverend Art and I have conversations about all sorts of different things. And sometimes I ask him questions, because he knows a lot. So I'm going to ask him some questions today. Like, I heard there's an anniversary coming up.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So tomorrow, September 30th, is the 254th anniversary of the founding of Universalism in the United States. It was just the colonies, so it wasn't even in the United States, because that was 1770, which is before, when we were just a bunch of colonies.
So, the anniversary of Universalism?
Yeah, which is one end of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. So, as we see sometimes in the news today, there's a way of thinking about God and religion that portrays a very angry, judgmental God that separates people into those who are good and those who are bad. And that we see that in some political rhetoric today and in all kinds of ways. And that was the way people thought back then. But then there were people who were starting to read the Bible, and they saw in the Bible a very loving and accepting God that reaches out to everyone, that forgives, that just this, who is a God that is all about love. And so some preachers broke away from their churches back in England and started preaching about this God of love rather than a God of judgment and God of punishment.
So, I heard about this guy named John Murray.
John Murray, yeah.
Who was born in England,
Yeah?
but for some reason he came over here.
Right. So, John Murray was born in England. He was a Methodist preacher, And then he was influenced by this whole thinking about universalism. And so he started becoming a universalist preacher. And then a lot of tragedy happened in his life. His wife and son died in a plague-like that went through England, and because of the money he had to put out to take care of them, he was in big debt. And at that time in history, when people had a lot of debt, they were put in jail until they could work to pay back that debt. And so when he got out of jail, he said, you know, this universalism thing hasn't worked for me. My life is a tragedy. I'm getting on a boat and going over to the colonies, and I'm going to start over and I'm going to find something different to do with my life.
Is it true that he lived in Massachusetts?
Ah, he did, but before he got to Massachusetts, his ship was on its way to Philadelphia, where there were a few Universalist folks, and got stranded on a sandbar off the coast of New Jersey. And John Murray and a couple of guys from the ship took one of those little rowboats ashore to get some more supplies because they were running out of food. And they were in this place in New Jersey. Of all the places in New Jersey, they're walking through this field and they see this little like stone chapel. And they found the farmer and they said, "What is that? How come you have a chapel in your field?" And the farmer, Thomas Potter, said, "Oh, I've been going down to Philadelphia every once in a while because there's some Universalist preachers, and I'm trying to get one of them to come here and preach to me and my neighbors. So I have built them a church in my field."
So that whole, if you build it, they will come?
That was his thinking. And he asked John Murray and a couple of sailors that he was with, and he said, "Have any of you heard of Universalism?" And John Murray said, "Well, I used to be a Universalist preacher, and then my life got all messed up, and I don't do that anymore." And so they made a deal that if by Sunday morning the ship was still stranded on the sandbar, then he would come ashore with the guys from the ship and he would preach a Universalist sermon in Thomas Potter's little church.
So the suspenseful part. Who thinks that the sand was still holding the ship? Oh, one, two people, couple, okay. Who thinks the ship had left? All right, Reverend Art.
Guess what? The ship was still sitting there. The seas were calm, the ship was stuck on a sandbar, and on September 30th, tomorrow, 1770, 254 years ago, John Murray preached a sermon in that little chapel in Potter's Field, in somewhere near Barnegat, I think, New Jersey. And then he just felt called to once again continue being a Universalist preacher. And he ended up all over the East Coast, all the way up to Maine and down to Philadelphia, preaching to people until Massachusetts comes into the picture about 10 years later. He is called to be the minister of a church in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And that's where he settled for all of his ministry. And it was the first actual Universalist church that called a minister and grew as a parish and a congregation right in Gloucester. And they, at one point, this is a little aside to the story, many years later, they took the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to court. Because at the time, there was only one church in every town, and some of the town's taxes paid for the church and the minister. And then these other churches started coming up in these different towns. And it was the Universalist Church of Gloucester that sued the state of Massachusetts to not have to pay taxes to support the other church in town. So they're a renegade kind of bunch. But it's also the foundation of love and respect for all people is a deep part of that story.
I even heard that there's a church in Attleboro named after John Murray. Is that
Yes, there is a church in Attleboro named after John Murray. That's right.
Cool.
That's right.
Well,
And our whole UU district here is named after, I'm going to talk to the adults about a guy named Hosea Ballou. And this is the Ballou Channing, William Ellery Channing, who was a major Unitarian, and Hosea Ballou, a major Universalist. And I talked about Channing a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I want to take the kids upstairs so we can make our covenant together.
Sure.
So are you guys ready to go on a journey of learning and discovery? All right, let's go.
Right.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Yeah, musical.
All right, so this song is by a poet and activist named Joshua Blaine, who I discovered online. It's so cool how much you can find of what cool things people are doing. We're going to sing it a few times and definitely want you to join in, okay? It's catchy, okay? And everyone has what you need? Okay, let me go back. Sorry. So in the spirit of universalism. No one is getting left behind this time. No one is getting left behind. No one is getting left behind this time. We get there together, we never get there at all. We get there together, we never get there at all. We get there together, never get there at all. No one is getting left behind this time. No one is getting left behind. No one is getting left behind this time. We get there together, we never get there at all. We get there together, we never get there at all. We get there together, we never get there at all. Please join us. No one is getting left behind this time. No one is getting left behind. No one is getting left behind this time. We get there together, we never get there at all. We get
turned a wolf. Know that the love which blooms inside you is stronger than fear. For people who love find strength they didn't know they had. Know that the love inside you is stronger than illness. For people who love hang in when physical health is gone. And know that love is indeed stronger than death. For people who love are like stones tossed into a pool. The circles of love radiate out and echo back along the stone has come to rest on the bottom. So remember your love as a source of strength. Remember who you are, lovers tossed by these difficult times.
And I have another short reading that is one of the key biblical readings that the Universalists held up. It's from the first letter of John. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. And as I mentioned, this passage, this biblical passage, was a key passage, a great influence to our Universalist ancestors. This was a God they could understand. This was a God who welcomed them and embraced them for who they were. This was the kind of God they wanted to worship, and so they built their religion around this image of God. John Murray had quite a spiritual journey, didn't he? His story reads like any one of those great epic Greek legends or something. Someone who was searching or hurting or struggling in some way takes a journey, searches for meaning. The journey may be an actual trip or a move across the ocean to a new place. But the inward spiritual or psychological part of the journey is what changes us the most. The traveler, whoever we happen to be, encounters obstacles, trials, and tests, and then she or he finds enlightenment or healing or wholeness. It is John Murray's story. It is all of our story. And it is the journey to a place where we feel welcome in our own bodies and souls. On this journey, we find something within ourselves and in our communities, something that feels like home. Now, John Murray belonged to this first wave of Universalist preachers who were still somewhat tied to Calvinist doctrine. He believed, and his cohort believed, that God did judge us for our faults and failings, but also forgave us if we were sorry for what we had done. A bit later, around the beginning of the 19th century, when Unitarian thought was also forming, there was a second wave of Universalist preachers led by a man named Hosea Ballou. Ballou and this second wave, who were called ultra-Universalists, believed that God, like the loving Father, represented in the Bible, embraced everyone in the power of everlasting love, regardless of what we might have done. They rejected hell and any form of judgment and punishment. And there was a great debate. There's even a book that was written, like I think in 1849, by the two factions, the ultra-universalists and the other universalists, where they each kind of argued their position. So there was a lot of debate and not controversy, but just some real concern about that position that the ultra-universalists took. But it was the ultra-universalist position that kind of won the day and took the wave of universalism to that next level. Around the beginning of the 20th century, when there had been wave after wave of European, mostly immigrants, who had come here, and there were a lot of people struggling, and there were a lot of people who were poor and destitute. Universalists, under the leadership of Clarence Skinner, who was a Universalist minister, embraced what is called historically the social gospel movement. They centered the teachings of Jesus on what was happening in the world of their day: immigrant poverty, workers' rights, and social equality. And then once the Depression hit, their cause became even stronger, as so many people were out of work, in breadlines, so many had lost so much. They really made it a point to center the teachings of Jesus and to center their religion around the teachings of Jesus and how Jesus cared for other people. Now, a couple of centuries later, the teachings of Jesus and his care for the human family are not heard as much in very vocal segments of the Christian world. And I think it's important for all of us to remember that and to keep bringing religious thought that we hear around us back to the teachings of Jesus. The hallmark of our Universalist heritage is our own insistence in the saving power of love. Love is the ground that we stand upon, knowing and believing that all people, including ourselves, are born in goodness and love. Our Universalist theology tells us that God is equated with love and that the healing and wholeness that love brings, that God brings, is available to all. I believe that love is part of that ultimate reality, the goodness of an abundant and benevolent universe, which many call God. Love is the home for which our hearts and souls yearn. It is a powerful response from our deepest being, and it encompasses the source from which all life flows. To love is ultimately to reach beyond oneself into the larger community in the universal beyond. Love is by its very nature relational. the place between, the place which connects us to each other and to the larger world. Love is the force which calls us into deep relationship, a relationship that accepts and yet critically evaluates everything against the standard of goodness and worth which love holds as its ideal. Love lives most deeply at the center of our own hearts, the center of our families, the center of this community, and the center of any place we feel welcomed. And as we will explore next week, when we talk about the new Unitarian Universalist values that was passed by the General Assembly in June and incorporated into our bylaws, love sits at the center of those values. For John Murray, his new life in the colonies began 254 years ago tomorrow, September 30th, 1770, when the wind did not change that he was praying for, and against his own better judgment, he preached a Universalist sermon in the little chapel in Thomas Potter's Field, in a place that has now been named Good Luck, New Jersey. 254 years ago, the power of universal love and salvation healed his own aching heart and renewed his faith and his call to preach. Now, in this time and place, it is important for all of us to allow the power of universal love to come into our own lives, heal our own brokenness, so that we can radiate that love throughout the world. Amen. And blessed be. I invite you to rise in body and spirit and sing number 318 in the great hymnal, We Would Be One. This, by the way, you will recognize the tune. It's a common hymn tune, and this hymn was written by a bunch of Unitarian and Universalist teenagers. Their UU youth group that was formed at the time that our two denominations merged. And this became a hymn that was introduced and highlighted in 1961 when the two denominations merged.